the Royal Rumble, the men's Royal Rumble match, lived up to the hype in every way, except for one, which we will get to in a little bit. But the men's Royal Rumble played out, for the most part, how I thought it would. And you can go back to last week's episode and you can check it out and you can see that I'm, for the most part, like I laid out a very clear line of how I thought the match would end, how I wanted to see the match end, what I ultimately thought would happen, which was the betrayal of Roman Reigns by Paul Heyman to help CM Punk, and we were going to get the payoff of what was the promise, what was the favor that Paul Heyman owed to CM Punk. We did not get that. We did not get clarity on that. We still don't know what the issue is. But we started this match with Rey Mysterio and Penta. Now, did Penta's feet touch the ground the second time they went up over the ropes? Oh, methinks yes. Did the WWE show a replay? They sure didn't. Did they show other replays almost instantaneously in this match? Yes, they did. Were they very much trying to cover up the fact that Penta got booed for? Yes, they were. But that's okay. Penta had a nice showing. Now, there were moments in this match where Penta's down and not actively involved, but there were some really cool moments in it for Penta, who puts together an awesome first Royal Rumble showing. But Rey Mysterio and Penta together, it was beautiful to start. Chad Gable gets in there. You get some of that chemistry. Carmelo Hayes and Santos Escobar, they come in next. Otis is in there. It really starts to flip on its head when Braun Breaker gets in there, because there is a star power and an explosiveness to Braun Breaker that you just can't teach. And there is so very clearly a main event guy long-term in Braun Breaker. He gets in that match, and he starts unleashing hell. And then Tozawa comes out at number 8, but he gets attacked, and ISHO Speed has to come out in his place. Triple H says, hey, you got to go. Speed, you're going out. So ISHO Speed comes out. And in what was probably the most unbelievable but totally real bump in the history of the Royal Rumble, Braun Breaker breaks ISHO Speed in half. Like, the impact that ISHO Speed felt in that moment is like next level. It is so jarring. And to watch his head his neck snap the way that it did, whiplash as Braun Breaker like pinned him down into the mat. And by the way, looked like his shoulder eventually slid up like onto Speed's face as they made contact with the mat. Yo, kudos to ISHO Speed, because that was brutal. And kudos to Breaker, because if anybody ever says pro wrestling's fake, good luck teaching that impact. Good luck teaching how to get hit by that dude and slammed into the mat and it not hurt. Newsflash, that shit hurts. That's very real. Eventually, Speed gets thrown out of the ring. Otis catches him. Otis throws him up over his head, over the announce table. And then eventually, after the match, you go on social media and you can see that Speed's like missing a chunk of his like lower calf. Brutal. Good showing by him, though. Yo. Absolutely fine celebrity appearance. That worked out just well. Like, just fine. Well done. Sheamus enters the match. It felt like things started to kind of slow down. Jimmy Uso gets in the match. It's okay. I think at this point I've kind of established how I feel about the Usos. Jimmy's fine. Andrade comes in. I love Andrade. Big Andrade guy here. And when Andrade went to AEW, I thought the sky was the limit. And I very much thought Andrade would have like multiple title reigns, even like whether it was a secondary title or not. That's where I thought he was going to go and then maybe get into the main event picture. It never happened. Andrade kind of feels like another guy in WWE right now. It doesn't feel to me like he's being elevated to where I would want to see him, which is also a little bit concerning because I'm a very big Malachi Black, Aleister Black fan, and knowing that he's going to go there soon, I don't want to see the same thing happen to him. It doesn't mean that I think they're incapable in the WWE of figuring out a way to book Andrade or eventually a returning Aleister Black well. It's just a little concern that I have. I think that Andrade felt like a bigger deal, especially later in his run in AEW, specifically around when Punk put together or presumably had some input in the roster that was on Collision. That's when I thought Andrade was at his very best. He was fine in this match. Number 12 was the big one. Jacob Fatu comes in, and he starts raining down chaos, raining down violence. Jacob Fatu once again had a star performance. At this point, if you have not yet gotten on the Jacob Fatu train, I got news for you. There's a little bit of room left, maybe in the caboose, but this dude is an absolute stud. This guy is a main event talent. Jacob Fatu, make no mistake about it, will headline multiple WrestleManias in his career. This guy is an absolute star. And the best part about Jacob Fatu is that each and every time he was lined up across the ring from anyone, he felt like he belonged. At no point did Jacob Fatu stare down another superstar, get in a frame with another superstar, and not look like he belonged. We're going to get there in a second because there was a very important face-off that he had, and I think it established. Ludwig Kaiser gets in the match, gets eliminated almost immediately. The Miz gets in the match. He was fine. Joe Hendry, the lone representative of TNA in this match. Admittedly, I thought we would see a few TNA stars, including the Hardys. I really thought we were going to see at least one of the Hardys. Would have gotten a huge pop, would have been safe to have in that match, a lot of name recognition, would have also helped out that partnership, would have certainly let people know that the Hardys are still active in pro wrestling, on Impact. Didn't happen. But Joe Hendry had like a good performance. Ultimately, Hendry gets eliminated by Roman Reigns, which in the moment people seem to feel online was not a squash, but was just kind of like, did Joe Hendry really get much in? Did he feel like he was minimalized? When you get eliminated by Roman Reigns, of all people, you're doing just fine. Speaking of Roman Reigns, he was the 16th entrant into the Royal Rumble, took the place of Joe Hendry, came in after Joe Hendry, eliminates Joe Hendry from the match. Drew McIntyre gets in. You get the showdown, the face-off between Reigns and McIntyre says, this started with you, this is going to end with you. Also mentions his family. You get that face-off, and you're like, yo, we have good storytelling here. If they ever wanted to go the Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns thing, they absolutely could. No doubt about it, that could be a main event of just about any pay-per-view. Will it main event WrestleMania? No. Will it main event something else? Entirely possible. Finn Balor comes into the match with a new theme and FXXX, and nobody seemed to understand or know in the moment who was coming out, which is honestly just a problem across the board. Like, we need to go back to the days when wrestling entrance themes were unique, when you would hear a small tagline in the very beginning that would indicate who was coming to the ring. Right now, so many of the talents, it feels like their music is just a slight variation, a slight riff on a general, like ringtone. And it makes things, it gets exacerbated in the Royal Rumble because you just keep hearing generic theme after generic theme, and you almost have to look at the board first to figure out who's coming out. You should have the audio cue of knowing who's coming out. Not saying it needs to be the glass shattering, not saying it needs to be If You Smell, not saying it needs to be the dong of The Undertaker or the first couple of notes of Kane's entrance, but like in the Attitude Era, we knew who was coming out within 2-3 seconds of the entrance playing. That is certainly not the case now. Finn Balor comes out to a minimal pop relative to what his star power is, I think in large part due to that. Shinsuke Nakamura comes in. I have long liked Shinsuke. I did not enjoy Shinsuke's performance in this match. I felt like it was plotting. Didn't do it for me. At number 20, Jey Uso comes into the match. I've been very clear about where I'm at on the Usos. Jey Uso has done a marvelous job of getting Yeet over. The crowd goes absolutely apeshit every time he comes out to the ring. There's no debating it. There's no doubting it. He is easily one of the most popular superstars in WWE. But just because he seems to be everybody else's cup of tea doesn't mean he needs to be mine. Now, just because I'm critical of it also doesn't mean that I'm right. But I watched Jey Uso in the ring, and I go, I watched Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso in a WrestleMania match that I was in attendance for. That was my pee break on night one of WrestleMania last year. I haven't actually gone back and watched the entire match yet. I've watched parts of it. I've watched them spam super kick after super kick. I don't get it. I understand the aura because he has it. I understand the catchphrase. Get it. I understand the merch. get it. I understand the likability, get it. But the in-ring part of it doesn't do it for me. And to me, it still feels like a tag team wrestler. Nobody can change my mind. Perhaps at some point he's going to put on an absolute classic of a match, and I'll get to come on this show and say, you know what, I was wrong. Jey Uso had it in him the whole time. I just didn't know. But as of right now, So Jey Uso comes in the match, totally fine. AJ Styles has to follow him. It's going to be a hard way to follow that entrance, but he gets a big pop. Returning AJ Styles. People love AJ Styles. That's fine. Braun Strowman comes into this match, and after Jacob Fatu has these long stretches of just looking incredibly dominant, including a face-off with Roman Reigns, which is really where, to me, you got the 100% confirmation that Jacob Fatu belongs in main events and that kind of top-of-the-card feud. Those two face-to-face didn't look weird. Eventually, Strowman comes out. Strowman is able to eliminate Jacob Fatu, who rips the announce desk apart, freaks the F out, like it becomes a whole big thing. John Cena enters the match at number 23. And at that point, I go to myself, ooh. Like, at that point, I knew, well, we still have to get Punk. We still have to get Seth Rollins. LA Knight was going to be in there. Sami Zayn was going to be in there. Figured Logan Paul would be in there. So I was like, wow, if Cena's coming out at 23, does that mean we have a big surprise coming? Who the hell is that going to be? We'll get there in a second. But Cena comes out, does his Cena thing. CM Punk comes out. Now you have Punk and McIntyre and Roman in the ring together. Very interesting. As they are facing off, the three of them, Seth Rollins' music hits. Now you get Rollins in there. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Cena, Punk, Roman, Rollins. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now you feel like, oh, shit's going to hit the fan in a big way. Oh, and by the way, McIntyre's still. So you're like, all right, that's a lot going on. Dom Mysterio comes out. Sami Zayn comes out. Damian Priest gets in there. LA Knight gets in there. And then at number 30, you get Logan Paul. Now, in the midst of all of this, all I keep thinking to myself is like, there were no really big surprises in this match, which I thought was a little bit disappointing, especially because in the Women's Rumble, I didn't feel like there weren't really many surprises there either. Then I'm like, did you miss an opportunity? Well, no, because the storytelling within the match and the way that they've set things up is huge. And a lot of it really does kind of focus in on Roman. You have Roman and McIntyre, Roman and Fatu. You have Roman and Punk, Roman and Rollins. You, in theory, could have Roman and John Cena. Like, all of that works out. Now, where things get really hectic in this match is when Rollins and Roman are just gunning for each other. And eventually, Punk dumps them both over the top rope, at which point Roman is irate. You get a CM Punk Roman kind of interaction, and then Logan Paul dumps CM Punk out of the ring. And you go, oh no. And then Seth Rollins snaps, hits the curb stomp on Roman on the floor, gets into a scrum with Punk. Then eventually, Rollins comes back around, gives a stomp to Roman on the stairs, gets back into it with Punk. So that very much looks like we are setting up a potential triple threat down the road with no title on the line, which nobody saw coming. In the midst of all the chaos, there's another moment that stands out because apparently this did not go over well if you are to believe reports coming out of the Royal Rumble. But there's a moment in this match where Logan Paul's kind of mugging for the hard cam. LA Knight is set up behind him like he's getting ready to get into it with him. And in the background, you get Damian Priest along with another superstar eliminating Drew McIntyre. It was Jey Uso eliminating Drew McIntyre from the match. But there's this weird thing where they kind of bump into LA Knight, Logan Paul, and it just seems like something went awry. And so this, what would have been or should have been a pretty dramatic elimination of McIntyre kind of goes over like a fart in church. Like it was just like, oh, instead of like, whoa, you're like, Those were like the two biggest moments in the match. Now, you finally get down to the final three. And you have Jey Uso, you have Logan Paul, and you have John Cena. Paul gets eliminated. Fine. You then are left with Jey Uso and John Cena. Now, again, my kids just getting into wrestling. They know who John Cena is, okay? They at least know the John Cena theme song. And so they're like, all right, we want John Cena to win. I'm like, all right, guys, like, that's fine. You can want John Cena to win. Start going back and forth. Then they start doing the wrestling fan thing where it's like, oh, he's going to lose. Oh, yeah, he's got this. Oh, no, he's going to lose. And ultimately, you get both superstars on the apron. You get John Cena getting ready to give the AA to Jey Uso, which would then presumably dump him on the apron and then onto the floor. Uso gets off of his shoulders, comes back from the middle of the ring, shoves John Cena. Cena lands on the floor. Everybody's shocked. Jey Uso wins. The crowd goes wild. Now, in the arena, it felt like everybody was hunky-dory with Jey Uso winning. But online, people had an absolute conniption. Now, was it fair for people to get upset with the end of this match? Yes and no. It was a really strong Royal Rumble match. I think you would have a very hard time convincing a wrestling fan that this wasn't a good match. Cena at the end raises Uso's hand. And I don't think they needed to go this far. Like, I don't think they were at the risk of having Uso come off as like a heel or anything for eliminating Cena in his last Royal Rumble. But nice of Cena to go out and like essentially try to make sure like this is okay. And then he got out of the ring. The thing with the Jey Uso of it all is after the match, he essentially says that he's going to take on Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. And that's fine. That's like in the grand scheme of things, it's okay. It doesn't move the needle for me, but it's okay. But it's not a main event match. And I know that he's called main event Jey Uso. But to me, he's not a main event guy. Now, at least he's not a main event of WrestleMania guy. I've already gotten to see Gunther versus Jey Uso. I wasn't impressed the first time, and I'm not going to be impressed this time unless something really changes. Now, could there be a grander plan at work? Could we get to something I wanted to see? I honestly thought we were going to get The Rock showing up at number 31. I truly thought in my heart of hearts we were going to get The Rock at number 31. I was convinced. And then it didn't happen. I thought to myself, what if this whole thing is a big swerve? We saw Gunther versus Jey Uso, and Gunther won recently. What if right before Jey Uso thinks he's going to get to go into WrestleMania and take on Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship, what if The Rock were to come out and tell Jey Uso, no, I'm the high chief. That title shot goes to me. It would get nuclear heat with wrestling fans, especially given how behind Jey Uso the fans are. Can you imagine if The Rock were to come out and take that match away? To quote JR, by God.